yourself for a second. But here, I can hold back enough. Oh, there we go. Okay. Welcome to Thanksgiving 2021, Cold Turkey Edition. Why is it called Cold Turkey Edition? Well, because certain things we stopped on a dime. We had a lot of them, we did a lot of them, and then we just didn't ever do them again, starting this morning. Or at least we haven't done them yet. On the other hand, we started doing other things. We went, I don't know, hot tamales this morning as well. So that's Thanksgiving 2021. It is 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is a magical hour for Thangs because at 10 o'clock the Armory is full of the spirit of Thang, and it's undiluted by humans, except for just a few of us in the innermost circle. So I really cherish this moment in the day. So without further ado, please welcome. We begin our first piece of the day, in which a person who will no longer, during this piece, be referred to as Joe Burgio, and myself, Paul Kafka-Gibbons, who will no longer be referred to as Paul Kafka-Gibbons, ask the question. What is the question? No.
Oh, what's it all about, Alfie?
Yeah, art. This art thing.
What's it all about?
Yeah. You know it when you see it. You know it when you're in it. Damn, you wouldn't call that a clean floor. I like the new administration in certain ways. It's an artist's floor. I'll grant that.
It is our canvas. Pristine.
Don't be shy. Come right in close. Come right in on Joe's mouth when he's talking. Get a close up. Get some dental work. Al dente.
Has it been gessoed?
Yeah, I mean,
all art has to be in its own frame, right?
yes.
Or it's
Yes.
not art.
No.
So we need our blank canvas.
You start with a blank canvas because that's how you know you're making art. And then you work for like 10 years. I was talking to my friend Michael about the studios that they built in 1905 where the serious painters were working. And he was modeling for them, must have been 30 years ago. And this is how he described the process. He said, I would take my pose and they would be where you are right now. Their canvas would be there, and they would look at me. So now I'm going to walk over here. I'm not the poser. And they would look at me, and then they would step back so that I was the right scale for their canvas. And they each carried a plumb line.
Plum wine?
Sorry, I can't really pronounce L's. Plumb line.
They carried plum wine.
They carried plumb wine and a plumb line, and they would do that, and then they would step forward and make a mark. And then they would step back and look, and then they would step forward and make a mark. And this went on for 4 hours, say. 2, 3, 4 hours. And then the master would come in. He was in his 80s. I don't remember his name. And he would take in the scene, make a few suggestions. One time, one of the there were two painters who were
Am I
married.
sufficiently odalisque?
You are so odalisque. Yeah, let me just take a moment to
Do
appreciate that.
we need to make any adjustments?
I don't think we do. Yeah, you capture the spirit of it.
But what about the essence?
You are, yeah, I mean, you are art, but you are also model.
How does one turn into the other? How does one become the other? Is it
Yeah,
a process
yeah.
of transformation?
Well,
Is it a process of creation? Is it a process of ablation?
I love how she can't tell where you started, which is perfect. I wish we had Lacey here, because she, you know, came into that tradition of the plumb line people.
Oh, the plumb line people.
And the women and the men, and she set up her camera and went over here and did stuff like and yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one way you know. That's one way you know you're making art. You go into an artist's space.
A studio?
You have a defined, you start with the blank canvas, you have
The
a
blank
defined
canvas.
object that is going to become art. You have a tradition of technique. You have a hierarchy of learning with and ability with certain recognized leadership, generally older leadership. You have a period of apprenticeship, of technique learning, a defined set of steps to become the artist. And then the objects that you create on the canvas must be framed. Then you have art.
Well, you're talking about representation.
Go on.
You're talking about representation. Because the frame must hold the canvas. And the canvas must contain the art, the image,
I'm with you. I'm with you so far.
the very stuff which represents something of the moment that is to be captured, framed, and contained. But you're all hung up on technique.
Repetition, pattern.
Pattern is key. Pattern is important. Pattern is rooted in socio-cultural reference. Without society, without a viewer, without an audience
And a certain sense of solemnity.
capable of interpreting and taking meaning from pattern, you have art.
Molly,
Yes,
and remind me.
Mary.
Mary,
Cranberry stuffing dance.
we are making this is art,
Okay.
and I'm Alfie,
Yes.
and we're breaking down what is art. Yeah, we're about 5-7 minutes in, maybe 23 minutes to go.
Good.
Yeah, and yeah, I want to ask you a question. Two questions.
Okay.
How does this make you feel?
It makes me feel nostalgic.
Peaceful?
Maybe.
What do you think of the hair on these? Not real baby hair is what I noticed. Because, you know, the great masters, this is a Raphael.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about how real it was, right?
Right.
But he kind of gave him Trump hair. Right?
Yeah, I could use a little more space.
I'm just not sure what, but yeah. But gee, look at that sky. I mean, think about the technique of actually like producing that. Yeah. Now, think I better go to James on this one. James, how does this make you feel? How does this make you feel?
Okay. I feel like that person painted that just to match my shirt.
Yeah. Angry.
Close.
For some reason, this work makes people, not me, angry. Which is very interesting, right? Because, like, what did it do to you? You know?
Art provokes an emotional response. In this case, anger.
And note the placement of the wire. I think one of the aspects of anger that comes up right away is, how do you know which direction to orient this work of art? Now, in fact, you do know. And somehow that could either lessen the feelings or
Let's
actually
try to get
make
in
them
touch
stronger.
with our anger.
The anger makes sense because it looks like two sword blades.
This is by association. Are you truly reminded of anger, or are you angry at art? Someone here is angry at art. What have I done to you to make you angry?
I'm now going to do phrase 2 while discussing the psychoanalytic theory.
I think the anger is rooted in deep frustration.
While Joe continues to speak, Art continues to speak. So, the psychoanalytic explanation of why certain works of art make us angry goes as follows. We all begin as artists, and we all begin with satisfaction in our creation. At some point, someone tells us that
The
we
frustration is
don't
that
have permission to do it anymore.
when you see a painting like that,
There's a term, talent, which is
it
often
makes
used,
you angry.
and there's also an idea of
There's an essential
commitment,
belief,
training,
and I could have done that,
and we, almost all of us,
and I'm not considered art,
what's the word when you give something up?
or an artist.
You resign,
It's called sacrifice.
you quit, you quit with a deliberate.
Oh, you mean by
purpose.
giving up, not
You
giving
say-
something.
You say, I won't do this anymore. And then
I just do it over and over
the
again.
anger comes in when
It's
you
frustration.
see someone else who
Anger
truly got the
is
same
rooted
message
in
as you
frustration because you think you can do it and you're not
Maybe
getting
they
it.
got even stronger
You
messages
are.
that they didn't have, for example,
You
talent
can draw 3 lines on a canvas,
or commitment. But they
fill one of them in.
did not, that word starting with love is not coming to me. They persisted. And to this day,
Your frustration is
they
not
are
only
making
not
things, they are making
artists.
art, like art is making art over here.
You
And
don't have the audience.
so
You don't have the
there's a
critics.
feeling that there was
You don't have the media exposure.
we were in
You don't have the likes on Facebook.
we had to leave,
That's where your anger
but you
comes
got
from.
to stay. But somehow my opinion is what allows you to stay in Eden. And so my anger expels you from Eden. Finally, we're going to convince you to leave.
I'm the
And
lead.
justice will be done. That's the psychoanalytic explanation, with a little bit of religious background tossed in there just for fun. Aside number 1. Anything which can be described as artful or the art of is not art. The art of cooking, for example. It's wonderful. But it's not art. The art of the deep gets a lot of press. But it's not. Art Blakey is a jazz musician. That's not good news. The Artful Dodger, a character in a work of art, but not in himself art. They've got me way down here. They've got me way down here. They've got me way down here. Amy, please don't go. Mose Allison was not from Tuscany.
Neither am I.
Tampa?
Naples. I'll leave it to you whether it's Italy or Florida.
Now this baby I'm going to say this baby goes squarely into the niche of decorative art.
It is the decor.
I keep coming back to the condominium in Tampa where you would be at home. In the condominium in Tampa, you'd say, this complements this place, it enriches it, and it fits here without creating any tension in the space. And how we feel about it has a lot to do with how we feel about the condominium in Tampa.
Why would you put a painting of a window on the wall when you just have a window?
Ah, yes, yes. Well, because it so clearly fits there.
Because it had a frame.
It has a frame,
And by framing it,
note the perspective. Remember we talked about that?
perspective.
It has perspective, which came from
Perspective.
Italy.
Oh,
They worked
yes.
hard. It was a breakthrough.
Brunelleschi.
Exactly. Please elaborate.
What? Brunelleschi. I like to say Brunelleschi.
Okay, don't elaborate.
It's
Anywho.
like Brioski, but not the same effervescence.
Does it, it doesn't rise to quite the level of this guy, but it doesn't create feelings of shame and anger like this guy.
Ah.
I'm going to do phrase number 3 again.
Pretty little pootie.
Why, thank you.
That has a frame. And that doesn't. But it has a canvas. This has a frame and has evidence of being hung on a wall. These little fellers were painted by a master. Look at the expression. Look at the hair.
The hair?
Look at that hair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the master.
No. I'm talking about the pootie. Masters are big into hair and fabric. And of course, hair and fabric in sculpture. Not easy. Sculpture doesn't have frames, but it does have pedestals. Think about it.
Yeah, a pedestal.
Pedestal.
A bold and risky strategy
Well,
in presentation.
pretty small.
Yeah, and it's just sort of saying like,
There you are.
yeah. It's not considered a good thing if you put a person on a pedestal.
Unless they're art.
Well, yeah. Have we left anything important out?
No. They are here.
Okay. Well, I feel THANGsgiving 2021 Cold Turkey Edition has been launched with a fairly clear statement of purpose, definition of the range of objects that are possible, without any discussion of the
No, don't go there. I think that's for another time.
Yeah, we
Don't go there. Don't say that. No, don't start. Don't start. Don't start.
Voice, unrecognized, deep throat,